All right, this is Algebra 2, Lesson 8, Graphing the Sine and Cosine Functions. Number 1 says, sketch a graph of the sine function. There's a key word. We're just looking at the sine function on the intervals from 0 to 360, showing all the key points of the graph, horizontal and vertical intercepts, and maximum and minimum points. Mark the coordinates of the maximum and minimum points and the intercepts. Okay, so we're only thinking about the sine or the y's of our graph. Okay, so when we start at 0 degrees, which is another word for 360 degrees for us, right? And that's starting at 3 o'clock whenever we think about it as far as a clock, just like on the Ferris wheel example. It needs to be at 3 o'clock, okay? So where is sine? What is the value of the sine when we're at 0? Well, we're still sitting on the x-axis, right? So our value is going to be 0. The sine is 0. We've not moved up any, okay? So I wouldn't worry about plotting 30 and 60 right now. I would just jump all the way up to 90 degrees, okay? This is going to be 0, 0. I'm going to plot it over here. What is 90 degree sine? Well, on a unit circle, we know that when we are at, if I was to draw this over here, this is 0. At 90 degrees, this is 1, right? So 90 degrees would be 0, not 0. It would be 90 and 1. Our x is 90, and our height is 1. Now, if we rotate on over to 180 degrees over here on our graph, what is our sine? Well, our sine is 0 again. So we're back down here on the x-axis where we have 180 and 0. Now if we rotate again down to 270, what is our sine? Our sine is -1, right? Down here is -1, so we got to plot it right here. So we have 270 and -1. And if we move back up to 360, we've made a complete turn and we're back at 0. So we'd be at 360 and 0. Okay, now this is going to be difficult, but I'll try this graph here. Got a little crazy there, sorry. But there you go. You see the graph there. Okay, that is sine. Make sure you're focused in on that. That is the sine function. Okay, I'm going to let's do cosine in a different color. Let's do purple. Okay, we're going on number. Anybody got any questions about that? Everybody see where I came up with those numbers, the x's and the y's? Okay, now let's look at cosine. The cosine function, we're still doing it from 0 to 360. I just didn't put all those labels on there again just to show you that I'm not going to do that. But it says show all the key points of the graph, horizontal and vertical intercepts, and the maximum and minimum points. Mark the coordinates of the maximum and minimum points and the intercepts. Okay, so let's do this again. Let's think. We're only thinking about our cosine. So the value of our x's, okay? When we're at 3 o'clock or when we're at 0 or 360, whatever you want to call it, what is the cosine? Well, the cosine is 1, right? So we're starting up here, and we have a 0, 1 coordinate. Now, when we rotate up to 90 degrees, right here, guys, this is going to be 0, 1. 90 degrees is going to give us what? Cosine. Well, we've not moved off of the y-axis. Remember, cosine is the measurement from the x-axis. So we're on the x-axis. So when we have 90, it's going to be 0. We're set down here on 0. So that is 90 and 0. Now, when we rotate again 90 degrees down to 180, what is the cosine? Well, that is -1. We've moved down, or moved to the left, to -1. And when we go back up, or when we rotate down here, we've moved back to the y-axis, which gives us a 0. So we have, oh, I didn't label this, -1. And we have 270 and 0. And so 360, if you're tracking it, 360 is going to bring us back over to 1. So we have 360 and 1. And that graph looks like this. Okay, and it's a little bit more curved than that. Sorry, it's not the best drawing here. But it's a little bit more curved, but that's how you're going to sketch these type graphs. Remember at the very beginning, whenever we talked about these graphs, I said, look at where you are starting from. Okay? When I said, whenever you're starting at 1, that means you're probably looking at the cosine. Because 3 o'clock for the cosine is 1. If you're starting at 0, then the sine is 0 at 3 o'clock. So you're probably looking at a sine function. Okay? Now, this, I think this lesson, it also points out the amplitude and the, if I'm not getting ahead of myself, the amplitude and the periodic, or the period. So, sorry. What? Go ahead, whoever's got something.
May I join again to do my audio?
Your audio's fine.
No, like my audio with my earphone.
Sure.
I can't hear. Thank you.
Okay. So let's look at this. Whenever we talk about amplitude, okay, we're talking about, that will be represented as A for amplitude. And that's half the distance between the midline. I'm sorry, it's not half the distance. It is from the midline to the peak. And it should be whether it's to the, or to the peak, or to the maximum, or to the minimum. So it's measured between the midline and the peak, or the midline and the maximum, or midline and the minimum, okay? Now, periodic is basically how often it returns back to its original state. So this is the periodic. And within, this is one rotation, right? So it would have a period of 1, okay? Between 0 and 360.